been said that adventure is just bad planning. When you travel on public transport, most journeys become an adventure whether you like it or not. Sometimes though, you just want to see the country you're travelling through on your terms. And that's why these days, I choose to see the world through the eye of the rider.
He's moving, just slipping slowly. Red flame, heading out from the center of the rock. Behind
As we get our bikes ready on this frosty morning in June, we have a quick chat to the locals who seem confident we know what we're doing.
Actually, we'll just say 4 litres. 4 litres of fuel it holds. Is that what you said?
4.5.
And how far does that get you?
You know, I've never really actually measured it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So Paul, you ready to go?
Ready.
As ready as you'll ever be?
Ready.
Interesting to see what falls off first.
7:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
At exactly 7:45 a.m. or thereabouts, after packing enough food and supplies to last us about 8 days in the wilderness, we're finally ready to set off on our journey through the Australian Alps. Well, pretty ready. The route of our trip will take us in a loop around the Australian Alps, nestled somewhere between Melbourne and Canberra. I didn't know it yet, but Josh and Paul hadn't actually planned more than the first day of the route. Our start and end point was a little town called Wee Jasper, which I'd never heard of, and the first day would take us to Urangabilly, which I'd never heard of either. This lack of planning was what we call adventure, apparently. Josh Evans and his dad Paul invited me to ride with them soon after I got my own bike license. They said it would give me the confidence and experience to tackle any road surface I would encounter in the future. Josh and Paul have been riding these roads for years, and to make it even more challenging for themselves, they decided to do it all on the smallest bikes they could find. Joining us on the road were Phil Maloney and Ian Berry. They were headed to the Urangabilly as well, since they were attending the 40th Alpine Rally. Unlike the Dakar Rally, which is a full-on race through the harsh deserts of North Africa, the Alpine is, well, more of a get-together for riders from all around the country. These guys had been riding from Sydney, and after the Alpine Rally, they and most others would return straight home. We, on the other hand, had plans to keep going, but none of the other riders seemed interested in joining us. I wasn't sure why that was, but I was pretty sure I'd find out. It didn't take me long to find out that these guys liked the challenge more than I expected. We were now travelling on roads which appeared to be made of liquid Teflon with no sign of slowing down. Obviously, turning back was not an option, so the only thing I could do was keep going. If Paul and Josh were looking for a challenge, I'd say they were looking in the right place. Since I'd only been riding a couple of years, I was relying heavily on my tyres to keep me upright. My KTM was made for this kind of riding, and it was challenging enough. But those guys on their Honda scooters were really doing themselves an injustice coming out here so undergunned. By the time we hit the Long Plain Road, Ian and Phil had left us, choosing a different way to the Alpine Rally campsite. Although some of these tracks are quite tricky, it's easy to see why Paul and Josh venture off the beaten track. After a day of grueling riding on some of Australia's high country roads, we finally arrived at our destination.
Are you ready? Are you ready for this? I'm not sure I am, but go ahead.
As we rolled into the campsite of the 40th Alpine Rally, men standing around fires looked at us like we were aliens from an unknown planet. All eyes looked on in disbelief as Paul and Josh pulled up on their inappropriate steeds. It was hard to know what to expect next. Soon enough though, we were sucked into the whole thing. We were going down this rabbit hole, whether we liked it or not. The Alpine Rally was started in 1969 by a guy named Paul Giles. Since the roads up here in the Alpine country are so tricky, it is the perfect place to make members of his club into better riders. Now, 40 years on, over 200 riders brave the elements to get together and remember the days of old.
And what was I going to say? I forgot. Back to yeah.
Guy that's going to crank the Laverta up.
Profits a brand new tyre.
Needless to say, some of the activities are a bit hard to explain. These days the rally is organised by Henning Jorgensen, who still rides the same BMW he's had since new 40 years ago. And he still knows how to conjure up a sense of occasion.
I told you.
The rally was definitely underway. I had witnessed the start, I was sure of that much. But what now? What comes next?
Breakfast here, Josh. Laser gear.
I'm going to have a little bit of Kuma,
Oh yeah, 700.
and when I finish that, I'll move on to Ken Coben, and I'll probably have a bit of snow at Cabramurra straight after
Full
that.
list.
Yeah, a full three-course breakfast, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
You just can't stop.
And that was the end of the rally for some. After catching up with old friends over a 2-day barbecue, it was time to bravely hit the road and head home. For us though, it was far from over. With the official rally over, everyone who attends can make up his own way home, which is why we decided to head straight into the coldest part of Australia during a blizzard. Refueling the Hondas on the go was one of the quirks of these little bikes.
Not easy in big gloves and snow.
Some people might view that as a nuisance, but for these guys it was all part of the challenge. but we still had 7 days of riding ahead of us, and I wasn't sure how much of that time it would be snowing, and to me, that seemed like enough of a challenge. To start off at least, we'd head over Mount Selwyn and into Cabramatta for a bit of a regroup and a coffee. The general store at Cabramatta was a welcome retreat from the conditions outside. Out of all of the BMWs and other adventure bikes at the rally though, the only other rider we met up there was Claude on his 1950s Matchless.
Way better than the Discovery Channel.
The temperature outside by now was well below zero. Nightfall would be upon us in a matter of hours, and we had to decide where we would make camp. Setting up tents in this kind of weather was something none of us wanted to do. So we had a look on our map for some old rangers' huts that were available to campers caught in bad weather. The nearest one to us was quite close, but meant we wouldn't get much riding done. The next hut we could see on our map was a place called Gehi, near the Victorian border, more than 5 hours away. The question was, could we get there before dark?
What are you doing here, Josh?
Just modding the postie with some very hard and brittle tape. Well, it tends to stop when I go anywhere near water, not including rain. If it's a puddle, even if it's that deep, too deep.
Oh God, that wind is nice. I should get out my balaclava.
Come on, fingers. Oh. One more bit. Should do it. Right. There. That's got it. That's it. Looks good too, I must admit. It's very neat.
I just unpacked all of this bike, taken all the rain cover off, just to get a balaclava. I had it in my pocket all the time.
I dare you to drink that engine oil.
Oh, no. Oh. Sip it, don't gulp it.
It's too good to throw down. It's Castrol 1, you know. Castrol 1!
It wasn't long before we were off the beaten track and heading towards dirt roads again. Josh had spotted a shortcut about 5 clicks out of Cabramatta, and none of us knew what to expect, but since the map showed it would cut off a couple of hours, we decided to give it a go. Paul used to say that Josh thought he could get anywhere via a dotted line. I just hoped he wasn't about to be proven wrong.
Oh, this is going to be some kind of different ride.
Few hundred meters, I thought yesterday's Teflon road looked like a racetrack compared to this stuff. Luckily though, apart from a few slips and slides, we had no major casualties, but as soon as we'd passed the worst of it, my KTM broke down. The front sprocket bolt had come loose. Fortunately, we were able to fix it right there in the mud and rain, but by now we were tired and were thinking of the cabin that lay somewhere ahead. As the darkness fell in the forest, it became obvious we were lost. With a quick check of the map, we realised we had no idea which road we were on, but we just had to press on until we found something that looked familiar. Pretty soon though, we couldn't see anything at all.
Well, I stacked it big time.
Not much more to go by but the tail light ahead of us. We pressed on into the night. Turn after turn we rode in the rain and the darkness as we searched for a little hut called G-High. I reckon, yeah, probably right there. The next morning, while Josh was trying his hand at passive smoking, Paul was doing the dishes.
Doesn't look like you'll ever get that clean.
Over a breakfast of muesli bars and instant coffee, we decided to spend the day checking over the bikes and camera gear.
Easy.
Josh was still having trouble with his carburetor, sucking in water every time he went near a puddle. So now he had to pull it apart to see if he could find out where the water was coming in.
If my screwdriver fit.
And since wrapping his carby with gaffer tape hadn't worked the first time,
Little ball of water there, look at it.
he thought he'd try it again anyway.
Beautiful.
One carby a la gaffer. Why did Honda come up with something like that? That's amazing.
Too original.
Well, the H2O version.
Not only was Josh's bike unusually thirsty, his throttle was sticking as well. And this called for Paul's expertise.
I don't know.
With that said, it was back to the cabin for more surgery.
Coming down. Bring back a rabbit, Josh.
No worries. And all their children too. Yep, same.
The day of tinkering was useless.
Cycle Talk, that free magazine.
Josh's bike would continue to plague him, but there was nothing we could do about that here in the bush.
Story about.
We decided that night that in the morning we'd pack up and head towards Victoria and cross the Murray River at Tom Grogan. No sooner had we started out than the longest river crossing of our whole trip lay ahead of us.
Maybe just to the right there, Josh, but there's some big rocks there too.
And just when we thought the odds were stacked against the Hondas,
Even to here, look. Where I stood with the motors underwater.
things got even worse.
Got an electrical short. There's smoke coming out of the front brake switch.
As the storm clouds gathered overhead, the boys prepared their bikes for the crossing as best they could.
What's that you got there, Paul? Show us.
It's a no wet water bra.
All coasters need a good dry.
Keep it nice and cozy and dry.
Look at that.
Get us to say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beep on a volt. Roger, main beep under volt. Okay, stand by 13, we're looking at it. Okay, right now, Houston, the voltage is looking good.
Want to go again, Paul?
Why do we do this?
Because you've got an ADV sticker on your bike, that's why.
Bob, ask Mark if he's worried about rocks as much as craters. Okay, I got a rock about 2 meters in diameter. Mark,
That river crossing may be over, but there was still 2 more crossings ahead of us, and Josh's bike was still giving trouble. As we struggled in the rain to get his bike going again, I hoped the roads ahead would get better. Annoyingly, the roads seem to get worse. I suppose it doesn't help your riding when you're trying to take footage of nearby scenery. And after Josh helped me back to my wheels, he then set off to track down some dinner. He realised his bike was no match for the agility of the kangaroos, and then it was off to the next river challenge. Despite Paul's confidence, he was overcome by the rising waters. But I couldn't speak too loudly, because next, it was my turn. After very nearly falling in the drink several times, I was glad to be out of that river. Now it was Josh's turn, but unfortunately his bike was so aquaphobic, there was nothing else to do but push it across. Mercifully, the road after these river crossings straightened out a bit, and we could head towards Tom Grogan, leaving these rivers far behind. And there it was, the river crossing they call Tom Grogan. With already 2 river crossings under our belt for the day, this should have been a snack. But as it goes, Paul's bike soon turned into a submarine. Up next to tackle Tom Grogan was Josh. Traditionally, in this situation, Josh's bike would stall at the first sight of water. Crossing flowing water like this takes all your concentration, and after crossing 3 of them, I didn't want to see another river for a long time. After I crossed over and caught up with the others, I found them staring down the barrel of the road to Mount Pinnabar. This is Australia's highest road, and some of the sections are so steep they're only passable in the dry. We hung back and watched as Josh made his brave attempt, knowing that if he could make it with his dodgy clutch and no idle, then the rest of us could.
The mountain beat us. Damn it.
It's too steep, eh?
Thought I was doing well until I looked up and saw that I was less than halfway up. Couldn't even get up a little 3-metre little incline. But yeah, just that greasy bit that I just struck was just knobby tyre country. Dogman's Hut.
Since Dogman's Hut was nearby, we thought we'd make camp there. But that meant we'd made camp a lot earlier than usual, so we decided the best way to kill time was to make a massive fire.
I reckon I get this fire stoked up.
That's the way.
You've been going for a while, what do you reckon?
There was just one problem though. The fire got so hot, it started to burn the shack down. But that wasn't our only problem.
Bat in here, Paul.
Huh?
There's a bat in here.
They've got pretty good fangs on them too, these little buggers.
I have to say, that is the biggest log I've ever seen in a fire. It's so hot, I'm going to have to sit away from it.
After drying our boots overnight, A quick look at the map showed us the only way out of this place was back over the river we'd come across the day before. After finding this out, Paul was determined to not let water get into his boots again.
Why are you doing that, Paul?
It's sort of quadruple insurance. I've got two rubber bands per leg and tape. I don't know if it'll work because it can probably still slip up under there. Plus I look like someone out of World War I.
And then I asked Josh exactly where it was we were heading that day.
Somewhere I've never been before, somewhere in Victoria, miles and miles away.
Josh proved once again that these unlikely adventure bikes could go anywhere. And on that note, Paul tried the same trick,
Bloody thing.
but soon discovered that speed is everything. Josh worked out he had misunderstood the phrase shooting a documentary, we realised we had to hit the road if we were to make some ground that day. And then, just as the going was good, I noticed a white trail of oil spilling from Josh's bike. All the river crossings had taken their toll on the little red Hondas.
Well, it seems the posties like to suck in river water through the breather hose or something, so turned it to milk.
With water in their oil systems, these guys weren't going anywhere. And that meant I had to ride into Thredbo to try to find some oil. Which was easier said than done. The higher I climbed into the mountains, the more slippery the road got.
Back push. Engine stop. Engine arm. Proceed. Command override off.
The road was so slippery that when I tried to stand my bike up, I could hardly stand up myself. But I eventually made it into Thredbo, got the oil, and brought it back to the others. On the way to Thredbo, Josh and Paul decided to have some donuts for breakfast. As I rode down to Thredbo for the second time that day, on some of the most slippery roads I've ever been on in my life, I wondered why you'd make life even harder for yourself by riding such an inappropriate bike as these guys were. These things have got next to no suspension, an automatic clutch, no ride comfort, and they handle like an ice cream on a hot day. Clearly these guys knew something I didn't, and I was determined to find out what it was. Meanwhile though, we had to figure out where it was we were going to camp that night. As we refueled in Thredbo, we realised that all the rain we'd been having the last few days had come down as snow higher in the mountains. And that only meant one thing: to stock up on the beers and head up there as quickly as possible. Heading out of Jindabyne, we came across a road called the Barry Way, which took us directly south into Victoria. As the sun set that evening, we could feel the air temperature quickly drop below zero. We knew we were heading into some cold country.
It is snowing. Haven't caught much, but that's enough.
As it turned out, we got more snow than we bargained for.
Do that long enough and I'll have a snowball.
As the snowy road stretched out in front of us and our pitiful headlights pierced the darkness, our hopes of reaching anywhere decent to camp seemed to almost vanish. What's more, I finally discovered the advantage of riding postie bikes. With their skinny tyres, they were able to penetrate the snow and get traction on the ground beneath. With my wide rear tyre filling up with snow, I had no hope of getting traction. The hours ticked by, and as the road got steeper, I was struggling more and more to keep my bike upright. Our map showed there was a hut somewhere ahead, perched some 1,700 metres above sea level on Mount Wambago. But we didn't know how far ahead. We also didn't know how steep the road would get or how much snow we'd have to deal with. The combination of snow and my rear tyre made riding my heavy bike impossible, and I was forced to push for what seemed like endless kilometres. The only thing that drove me on was the thought of camping in a nice warm hut next to the fire. But by now I was sweating heavily under the strain of pushing my bike, and I was putting myself in a really dangerous situation. If I cooled down too quickly, the sweat would freeze against my skin, and out here in the cold I would certainly get hypothermia. I needed to get to that hut, wherever it was, as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the others pushed on and scouted out the road ahead, but they could only wonder how long all this hell would last. The saying goes that you'd take any port in a storm, but the hut that we found out there in the dead of the night was not the sight for sore eyes we were hoping for.
Spent all night getting here. 11 o'clock at night.
I'll see you later, Josh. I'm going to go sleep in a warm cabin.
It's only minus 2.5. Mild.
How did you sleep this morning, Paul?
Beautiful. It's actually quite warm and pleasant. I'm glad we slept outside rather than in the hut.
When we arrived at this place in the middle of the night, it looked like a real horror show, and I can't really blame the others for not wanting to sleep in the hut. But after that long night of pushing my bike up here, there was no way I was going to sleep out in the snow.
Steep as a board.
In the daylight though, this place didn't look too bad at all.
To be honest with you, Paul, that looks pretty good.
Just an old fly there.
We may have survived the night at Roger's hut, but on the way out that morning we got to see the track for what it really was. And I still can't believe we found it in the night. Since everything was covered in snow, the only thing that gave away the fact that there was a track here at all in the dark was a gap in the trees. And even then it wasn't exactly a highway. All this riding in the snow might look easy, but it was a constant struggle to keep the bike upright. And trying to sleep in a hut that came straight from the set of a horror film didn't help with my road fatigue either.
Alright, this is a neat way to travel. Isn't it great?
As much as I knew the snow would have to come to an end eventually, something told me it wouldn't be the last we saw of it. And I'm pretty sure it's the same reason there was no one else riding with these guys. After we finally left the snow, we rode into a town called Benambra. The name had a very familiar ring to it, but the place had a distinct feeling of being deserted. After failing to find, well, anyone at all, we had no other option but just keep on riding to see whether we could find a place to camp for the night. Finally, we had some sealed roads to ride on, but the tarmac didn't last long, and as is the usual form with these guys, They just kept on riding at the same breakneck speed, and that meant I had to learn all about cornering on gravel in what I hoped wouldn't be a crash course. As the road continued to wind back up into the mountains, we became increasingly aware that the day was drawing to a close. We had to find a place to camp soon, otherwise we'd be stuck up here in the snow again. And I wasn't sure that's something I wanted to do. The sun was getting quite low now, so we decided to pull over and have a look at the maps again. It turns out there was a hut nearby where we could stay, but as you can imagine, there was a problem.
If we stay at this hut tonight, then we're going to ride all the way to Wee Jasper tomorrow. And that's about, 3 hours ride?
I don't care. Where do you want to stay?
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I'd love to stay in a hut tonight, but it means tomorrow's ride is long. 8 hours, 6 hours, I don't know. So we stay at this hut tonight, Wheelers Creek Hut, and we're going to ride all the way up here. That's 80 k's to there. Then we're going to cut across to Cancoban and then up on that boundary track, Yellow Bog Road.
The one we came down.
Yeah. Unless you know you want to go a different way.
I don't know any other way. Gee, that was a long time, wasn't it, to go down through there?
Let's just keep riding.
Huh?
Let's just keep riding.
No hut?
No.
We just got to think about where we're going to stay, because once we get up towards Corryong, I just can't think of anywhere.
You guys are sleeping huts anyway.
As the kilometres clicked by and we raced each other through the bends, we kept our eyes peeled for anywhere that might be suitable to stay for the night. It wasn't long before we came upon a little place called Stacey's.
What are you doing? More like it. Bloody Colonel Evans over here.
Since we were camping under the stars this evening, Paul decided it was time to impart onto us some of his knowledge of building fires in the bush.
That's amazing, just with a bit of paper.
Oh, it's already done.
I'll let you go out.
It's like it's been going for minutes.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Can you remember the times that it works? Because I can't. Genetics, I can't escape them, can I? It's going. Did you have to put all that bark on there? Someone's going to come and rescue us with all this smoke.
Get back in the smoke and do it, Paul. That looks great.
Get the beer, Josh.
Oh, okay.
Go make a fire.
With our scouts lesson over, it was time to hunker down for another freezing cold night. On day 7 of the rally, we had settled into the routine of the ride. Wake up to be greeted by frost. Run out of fuel. Lose some fingers to frostbite. Look at some cows. And so on. As I rode on, alone with my thoughts in my helmet, I couldn't help feel like I knew what the first astronauts had experienced. It was like I'd been shot into the great unknown, riding where I had never ridden before. When I first bought my bike and got my license a couple of years ago, I had no idea that when Josh said I should come on this rally because it would make me a better rider, he meant I'd spend most of my time not only on dirt roads, but on surfaces that I thought only existed on frying pans. The only difference between me and astronauts, I suppose, was that I'm sure they weren't ever as cold as I am now. And just when everything seemed to be going so well, something unthinkable happened. We had a lunch break. Well, I say lunch, but we only actually stopped because Josh got a flat tyre. Everyone knows how annoying a flat tyre can be, especially when time is an issue. But these guys know all about flat tyres apparently, and Josh and Paul turned what could have been a real disaster into nothing more than a quick pit stop. Soon we were chasing the sun and relishing in the twists and turns of the road to Cabramatta. As I looked over the edge, I wondered if all this hardship was worth it. But as we approached the highest town in Australia, we noticed how quickly the weather had changed and blanketed the whole place in snow. And that made all the pain of frostbitten fingers worthwhile. Although we came equipped with gear that would allow us to ride in sub-zero temperatures, nothing could keep the cold out indefinitely. As the night wore on, the wind chill factor of minus 18 degrees meant we had to find somewhere to camp sooner than later.
I think someone's following us. What? I think someone's following us.
There was a hut we had heard about not far from where we were, somewhere on the Long Plain Road. But we weren't sure we could get to it, since we didn't know if that road would be closed for winter. As we approached the turn-off, we noticed something wasn't right.
I saw some of the lights behind you guys.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think someone's trying to follow us. I think we can lose them though.
We weren't expecting company. As we rode on, our progress was hampered by the deep snow, and what should have taken only minutes according to our map had taken hours. All the while, the lights behind us followed, but never gained. Were they having as much trouble as us in the snow? Who were they and what did they want? As it turned out, the lights behind us belonged to cars driving on the highway a couple of kilometers away. So much for our wilderness adventure. By now we had been riding in the dark for over an hour and I was convinced we were lost. Thankfully Josh had the map and knew exactly where we were.
It's a bit hard to see through all the frost. There's somewhere there, over here. What's the temperature? Oh, it's warmed up. It's minus 3.8. It was minus 6 earlier.
Cool.
Yes.
What's the road like tonight?
Oh, you know, just smooth as a billiard table.
Covered in snow.
Seemingly unfazed by the circumstances, Josh decided it was time for a midnight snack.
I'm warm now, fingers are good.
That'll warm you up. Woo-hoo!
The Coonbill hut turned out to be one of the best we'd found so far. And since it was our last night of the rally, we thought we'd celebrate with a meal that was fit for kings. But despite my best efforts, the other guys went for the vegetarian option instead.
Cheese sandwich.
That night, after a nutritious meal, we all agreed that there was nothing better than a cold beer and an open fire.
Oh, that's better.
As a matter of fact, I've got it now.
This might be the last day of the rally, but there was still a lot of miles between us and Wee Jasper. Very snowy miles. The thing was, we didn't know how much snow was ahead or if we could even get through. The only thing we could do was go for it.
And he's set to go. Takeoff, of course, very critical. He'll build up speed as quickly as he can, and here he goes. And he makes it. A beautiful leap as Evel Knievel gets the roar of approval from the crowd here.
Since this was our last day of the rally, we pulled out all stops and gave it our all. Even so, it didn't take long before the snow became too deep, even for these snow machines.
Can't do it.
But Josh wasn't the only one flying too high. Paul too would fall victim to the deep snow. But as usual, these guys make even getting stuck look easy, and before I can say, get a real bike, I'm revisiting my deep snow nightmare. To try to save myself the situation where I'd have to push my bike for the rest of the day, I tried to get off the road where most of the snow was. And this worked for a little while, at least until I tried to take a shortcut. But thankfully, the cavalry arrived. I'd managed to get myself stuck in the deepest snowdrift we'd seen all day. So I thought from then on I'd probably better stick to the road.
Okay. You get any before pictures? I'm getting them now. Okay.
Works. Who says you can't ride in the snow?
At least I wasn't the only one struggling. Even the Brumbies were having a hard time.
Soft as I thought it was.
At this stage, it was looking like the ride would never end. There was still so much ground to cover, and the rain and snow over the last few days had turned this road into a real disillusionment park. Josh used to say, riding doesn't have to be fun to be fun. His words were echoing in my ears now as I pushed my bike up yet another hill. But there was no turning back now. After all this riding in the hellish snow, I finally remembered a riding technique I learned while riding in the desert in Central Australia. By standing on the foot pegs, you lower your centre of gravity, making your bike more agile as well as getting your weight off the rear wheel. Now I was ready to take on this road that refused to be beaten. This is not what I had in mind, but like those astronauts that flew off to explore the unknown, I too had discovered something. As much as this ride was a physical battle, it was a mental one as well. But as tough as it was, some of the parts of this country we got to see were simply breathtaking. But this kind of riding was taking its toll on us, and by the time we reached Dubbo Flat, we were all getting pretty hungry.
What do you reckon of that ice, Josh?
Is it thick?
It's pretty good.
Is it an optical illusion? Yeah.
It's thick, alright.
Not quite big enough to wrap your mouth around.
The bike would never break that. You'd hit that and down you go.
I did hit that and down I went.
No sooner had we all made it safely across than Josh said he'd forgotten something on the other side. We may have left the snow behind, but now the boys on the red bikes had their own nightmare. These guys had finally met their match in the red clay of Broken Cart Road. Even though I had real trouble getting traction in the snow, my tyres were designed to handle mud like this. And for once, I had the equipment advantage.
I believe I've got that on film, Dad.
The clay was so sticky, It would build up on itself and lock the tyres against the guard. No matter how many times they'd clear it out, it would just build up again straight away, making for very slow progress. But not even this could stop the little red Hondas. And if there was one thing I've learned on this ride, is that you don't always need a purpose-built adventure bike out here to have fun. Just a bit of determination and make do, and you're halfway there to having the ride of your life.